Did you know that over 1.2 million Californians are now flagged in federal databases as ineligible for certain US programs just because of where they live? Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? But in 2026, the line between state and federal identity is getting blurrier by the day. California, the fifth largest economy in the world, is creating its own set of rules. Rules that are starting to feel more like a separate country than a US state. From banning federal agents to testing a digital only ID that doesn't even work at airports, some experts are warning Californians could be on the fast track to becoming non citizens without even knowing it. What are these new laws and hidden rules? Could you or someone you know already be at risk of losing federal rights? Stay with us. Because the sixth reason will make you question everything you thought you knew about citizenship. We pour hours into bringing you the facts no one else is talking about. If this opened your eyes, hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but it means the world to us, and we want to hear from you. Do you think California is going too far or leading the way? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's spark a conversation that matters. Number 1, California's digital ID could quietly erase your federal identity. Imagine walking into an airport, scanning your ID, and being told, sorry, this document isn't valid. That's the shocking reality facing some Californians in 2026 with the rollout of a state-exclusive digital identity system. California is pushing forward with its own digital ID, branded as modern, secure, and eco-friendly. Sounds great on paper, but here's the catch. It's not officially recognized by federal agencies like TSA, Social Security, or even Medicare in certain cases. That means if you rely solely on this new digital ID, you could be denied basic services that are your right as a US citizen. Experts are calling this a quiet decoupling from federal oversight. It's not about seceding from the US, it's more subtle. The state is creating its own identity framework, which, over time, could disqualify residents from participating fully in national systems. Even more concerning, California's tech partners developing these IDs are private companies, meaning your identity could be managed outside of federal or even state protections. Your personal data, how you travel, what services you access, even what you buy, could be tracked. And if federal systems don't sync up with California's, you're left in limbo. For millions of Californians, this isn't a headline. It's already happening. DMV offices are encouraging residents to switch to the state's digital ID, sometimes without informing them that it doesn't work federally. So, what happens when your ID says you exist, but the government says you don't? And this is just the beginning. Yet, if you believe people deserve to know the truth behind the headlines, subscribe now. It's just one click, but it fuels every second of the work we do. Number 2, federal immigration laws. California has long branded itself as a sanctuary state, offering protection to undocumented immigrants. But in 2026, this stance has escalated into something far more controversial and risky for every resident, citizen, or not. Here's what's happening. California has started actively blocking federal immigration enforcement in several cities. Local law enforcement is now legally forbidden from cooperating with federal agencies like ICE. While many applaud this move as humane and inclusive, others warn it could trigger a constitutional showdown. Why does this matter to everyday Californians? Because when a state refuses to enforce or even acknowledge federal laws, it opens the door to being cut off from federal resources. Some experts warn this could extend to everything from federal grants to law enforcement funding, and even to citizenship protections in extreme cases. A leaked policy memo from a federal task force revealed that non-cooperative states may be deemed non-aligned, a term with serious implications. It means federal rights and privileges might no longer be guaranteed, especially for those who live in cities that completely reject federal authority. Think about it. If your city no longer recognizes federal law, can you still be guaranteed federal rights? Add to that the growing number of state-only legal statuses and rights California is creating, and you start to see the problem. The deeper California isolates itself, the easier it becomes for the federal system to exclude its residents in return. This isn't just about immigration. It's about the potential cracks in your citizenship status, cracks that could one day become a collapse. And we're only at number 2. Your support helps us keep digging deeper. Subscribe with one click and be part of the few who actually know what's going on. Number 3, a call me egg, state health mandates that could cut you off from federal services. California has taken public health into its own hands, literally. In 2026, the state rolled out independent health mandates and its own state run digital health pass. But here's the shocking part: these systems are not compatible with federal health databases, and that disconnect might cost you access to critical federal services. Let's break it down. California's Health Pass, linked to state based apps and databases, tracks vaccination status, medical visits, and eligibility for state benefits. But because it doesn't follow federal standards, thousands of Californians are now facing issues when trying to access federal healthcare services like Medicare, military health benefits, and even interstate travel approvals. Et c'est que toi, if you received a vaccine approved by California but not by the FDA, you might be considered non-compliant in the eyes of the federal government. That could flag your file, delay insurance payouts, or even restrict your travel. It's not just theory. A 2026 UC Berkeley study found that 1 in 7 Californians were flagged in federal health systems due to mismatched or missing data, simply because they followed state guidelines instead of national ones. Worse still, California's health tracking is being handled by private contractors, raising serious concerns about privacy, control, and future eligibility. You could be denied entry into a federal facility or flagged during a background check based on a health record you never knew was incomplete. So ask yourself, if your state says you're healthy and eligible, but the federal system says you're not, whose rules decide your rights? We're only getting deeper. And what's coming up in rule number 4 is something that could hit your wallet hard. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe with just one click, because truth like this isn't easy to find, but it's what we're here for. Number 4, California plans to tax your federal benefits. Yes, you heard that right. In 2026, California lawmakers introduced a proposal that could tax your federal benefits, including Social Security, Veterans Assistance, and even some federal retirement pensions. These are federal programs, funded by your tax dollars, meant to support you no matter where you live in the US. But California's budget crisis has led to bold new revenue strategies. One of them, reclassifying certain federal income streams as state taxable, especially for higher income retirees and long-term benefit recipients. If passed statewide, this could set a dangerous precedent. Imagine working your whole life, earning your federal benefits, and then getting taxed again, not by Washington, but by your own state. And here's the kicker: no other state is doing this at this level. California would be the first. Legal scholars are already raising red flags. Some argue this violates the spirit of federal protection laws. Others warn it could spark lawsuits or even lead to federal pushback, especially if other states follow California's lead. The bigger concern: if California starts treating federal benefits as outside income, it could gradually start seeing federally protected citizens as state liabilities, and that, according to a Stanford policy analyst, might one day redefine the legal standing of citizenship in states that openly defy federal guidelines. You worked hard for those benefits. They were supposed to be safe, but if your state can redefine how much of them you actually receive, are you really being treated as a U.S. citizen anymore? And yes, it gets even worse from here. We dig deep to bring the truth to light. Subscribe with just one click if you believe people deserve to know what's really happening. Number 5, the carbon credit system that could limit your freedom. California has always been ahead of the curve when it comes to climate action, but in 2026, the state introduced something that's turning heads and raising eyebrows: a state-run carbon credit system that tracks and limits your personal emissions. Here's how it works. Every resident is assigned a monthly carbon allowance. Drive too far, order too many deliveries, or travel frequently by air, and you could exceed your limit. Once you do, you're hit with penalties, restrictions, or forced offsets, all handled through a centralized digital platform linked to your state ID. Now, climate protection is vital, but critics argue this system quietly infringes on core rights. Think about it: your movement, purchases, even how often you leave your home. Odds are now tied to a state-controlled behavior score. And here's where it gets even more alarming. This system does not align with any federal framework. That means federal law doesn't regulate it, can't override it, and in some cases, doesn't even recognize the restrictions it places on individuals. What happens if your carbon credit score prevents you from traveling for a federal court appearance, voting in person, or accessing national parks? Legal scholars are calling this environmental overreach and warning it could slowly erode constitutionally protected freedoms. In short, a system designed to save the planet could also be used to control citizens, quietly, digitally, and without federal oversight. And if your identity becomes tied to how green you are, how long before it redefines what kind of citizen you're allowed to be? This isn't the future. In California, it's already started. We break down what others won't. Subscribe now with just one click and help us keep the truth front and center. Number 6, blocking federal agents. In an unprecedented step, several California counties in 2026 have passed local laws that restrict or completely ban federal law enforcement agencies, like the FBI, ICE, and even the ATF, from operating without prior approval from state or county officials. Supporters say it's about protecting local autonomy and preventing federal overreach. But legal experts are raising serious concerns when federal agencies are blocked from doing their jobs, especially in areas like national security or immigration enforcement. It creates a legal standoff between state and federal powers. And here's where things take a darker turn. The federal government doesn't take kindly to being shut out. In response, it's reportedly considering pulling back funding from programs in these areas and even reclassifying certain regions as non-cooperative zones. What does that mean for you? If you live in one of these counties, you could find yourself in a gray area, geographically inside the U.S., but outside the full protection of federal law. Federal investigations might skip your area. Federal assistance in emergencies could be delayed or withheld. And in worst-case scenarios, your legal rights as a citizen could be limited by default. It's a political power play that's being called soft secession. Not with flags and declarations, but through policy that silently redraws the boundary between state and federal authority. If California continues down this road, residents might wake up one day to realize they're still on U.S. Harmony soil, but no longer fully covered by U.S. law. And yes, this is only the halfway point. Your support keeps this research alive. Subscribe now with one click and help bring these buried truths to the surface. Number 7, California's creeping social credit system. It sounds like science fiction or something out of a Black Mirror episode. But in 2026, California is quietly piloting a state-level civic responsibility score. And while officials insist it's only for managing access to certain programs, privacy watchdogs are calling it what it really is: a social credit system in disguise. The system collects data from multiple state-run platforms: health, transportation, education, and even social behavior metrics. Residents with higher scores may get priority access to state benefits, faster approvals for housing, or lower insurance premiums. But those with low scores, delays, denials, and even disqualifications from state services. Here's where things get dangerous. The scoring algorithm is completely opaque. You won't know why your score dropped or how to fix it. And since it's not federally recognized, it creates a two-tiered system where your rights and access depend on how the state rates your behavior. And this isn't speculation. A leaked document from the California Digital Governance Task Force shows discussions about expanding the program statewide and tying it to job applications, school admissions, and public service access. The federal government hasn't signed off on any of this, which raises a chilling question. If your identity, access, and eligibility are tied to a state-run rating system, are you still being treated as a citizen or as a subject of a digitally controlled state? One misstep, one misunderstood post online, or even one protest attended could alter your score and your life. This isn't tomorrow's problem. While it's testing today in California, we don't just report news, we uncover what others ignore. So subscribe now with just one click and stay ahead of what's coming. Number 8, letting non-citizens vote. In 2026, California made headlines once again, this time by expanding voting rights to non-citizens in local elections. On the surface, it's framed as a move toward inclusivity, allowing long-term residents to have a say in the communities they live in. But dig deeper and you'll see how this policy is blurring the very definition of citizenship. Here's what's happening. In cities like San Francisco and Oakland, non-citizens, yes, even those without legal permanent residency, can now vote in school board elections, city council races, and certain community-level decisions. Advocates argue it's only fair, but critics and even some federal officials see it differently. They warn that when states begin giving voting power to individuals who haven't taken the legal path to citizenship, it diminishes the legal and civic weight of being a U.S. citizen. And more importantly, it creates a two-track system, one that redefines rights at the state level, while bypassing federal standards. This could have ripple effects. If voting no longer requires citizenship in certain parts of California, how long before citizenship itself starts to lose its unique protections? A recent federal briefing even raised concerns about whether California's election data can be trusted when it no longer aligns with national voter integrity laws. Even more unsettling, some local governments are now proposing ID alternatives for these voters, which won't be valid for federal purposes. That means two people in the same neighborhood could have vastly different legal identities and access rights, all based entirely on which system they belong to, state or federal. So ask yourself, when everyone can vote, does citizenship still mean anything? We dig into what others won't touch. Subscribe now with one click and help us keep exposing the full picture. Number 9, California's state-only cryptocurrency. In 2026, California launched one of its boldest experiments yet, a state-issued digital currency called CalCoin, designed to operate independently from the US dollar. Marketed as a localized financial solution, for residents, it's already being accepted for tax payments, public services, and even some state-run welfare programs. But behind the innovation lies a very real risk, undermining federal currency law. Here's why this matters. Under the US Constitution, only the federal government can issue legal tender. By creating a parallel system, California isn't just offering an alternative, it's quietly creating a financial divide between the state and the nation. Experts are calling it soft financial secession. The federal government hasn't officially recognized CalCoin. And major agencies like the IRS are warning that using state-only crypto could complicate your federal tax filings, social security payments, or even student loan management. And here's the scariest part. Some businesses and agencies in California are already offering discounts or priority services to those using CalCoin, making it more attractive than US dollars within state lines. That may seem harmless until you realize it's subtly shifting financial loyalty away from the national economy. What happens when the digital wallet you use for everything in your state isn't accepted by the federal government? Or when your financial records stored on California's blockchain aren't compatible with national systems? We're not just talking about money. We're talking about the very infrastructure that ties citizens to their government. If California keeps going down this road, residents may wake up one day with a currency that buys things locally, but costs them their place in the federal system. And there's still one more rule that goes even deeper. If this opened your eyes, subscribe now with one click, because we bring you the truth most are too afraid to tell. Number 10, secession talk is no longer a joke. What used to be late-night comedy material is now serious political conversation in parts of California. In 2026, talk of California's secession from the United States has gone from fringe conspiracy to grassroots momentum, especially in northern regions like Jefferson County and parts of the Central Valley. Fueled by dissatisfaction with federal policies, economic inequality, and cultural division, local groups are actively proposing legislation to distance themselves from Washington. Some of these groups have even begun crafting state-first constitutions and hosting mock referendums. Sounds dramatic, right? But it's real, and it's growing. A recent poll by a leading California university showed that 28% of residents under 40 support full or partial independence from the U.S. And while that's not enough to spark a legal split, it's more than enough to raise alarm in federal circles. Here's why this matters to you. Even the discussion of secession triggers legal consequences. Residents involved in these movements, whether through protest, donations, or online organizing, could find themselves flagged by federal agencies under sedition or anti-government activity watch lists. And if California ever formally pushes for separation, the federal government could respond by restricting benefits, freezing federal funding, or suspending national legal protections in disputed regions. This isn't a Netflix series. It's real-time political tension that could have massive consequences for your rights, your benefits, and even your citizenship status. California isn't leaving the union tomorrow, but if this trend keeps accelerating, its residents might start to feel like they're already living outside the system. We break the silence on topics others avoid. Subscribe now with just one click and help us keep this conversation alive. So now you've seen all its 10 rules and it's clear. What's happening in California is far more than just policy changes. It's a quiet transformation that's redefining how citizenship, rights, and identity work in one of the most powerful states in America. From digital IDs and carbon credit systems to secession movements and alternative currencies, each rule chips away at the unified structure that holds the federal system together. Whether intentional or not, these changes are isolating California legally, financially, and ideologically from the rest of the country. And the most shocking part, most Californians don't even realize it. They're going to work, paying taxes, and trusting the system, while behind the scenes, the rules that define their identity as U.S. citizens are being rewritten, slowly, quietly, and in many cases, without their full knowledge or consent. Now, this isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Because whether you live in California or not, the ripple effect of these policies could soon reach your state. The question we all have to ask is, when a state no longer plays by federal rules, how long before it no longer belongs to the federal system? Stay informed, stay alert, and most importantly, don't assume your rights are permanent because in 2026, even citizenship is being redefined. We put real work into uncovering the truth. Subscribe now with just one click and help us keep exposing what others won't. As California's policies continue to evolve, residents face a growing divide between state and federal systems. With digital IDs, new tax proposals, and even the introduction of state-only cryptocurrency, the state is carving out its own identity. While these initiatives may be framed as progressive or beneficial, they carry significant risks, especially for those relying on federal protections. As California moves closer to creating a self-sufficient framework, residents may unknowingly be pushed to the margins of the national system. It's crucial to stay informed and engaged, as these changes could redefine the very nature of citizenship in America.